Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host, bestie, and senior educator at the Bhakti Center, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. We're also here with Mara, our executive producer. If you've got any questions for us, we have Question Day every Saturday where we read all your questions. And truthfully, to really sort of get deeper into your Bhakti, as you read, you're going to have questions. Things are going to come up, and you need to question. It doesn't mean you're faithless if you question. Faith needs to be strengthened by chiseling away at the illusions. And where are the illusions? They're stored in my mind. I've got some doubts out of misunderstanding, actually. And so questioning helps us sort of shine light where my short-sightedness is, or where my blind spots are. So it's good to have questions, write them down. We try to answer all the questions as best we can on Saturday. And then Sunday, we have a special guest. It's guest day. And we start those days a little later too. We start them at 8 a.m. 8 sleeping into 8 p.m. We call it sleep in Saturday and Sunday. Kaustubha, I can't hear you, brother.
I was going to say 8 a.m. Eastern time. So people
8 a.m. Eastern time. That's right. Because we have an international crew here. And we have a special guest this weekend, Johnny Harrison, whom we love. She's one of our favorite singers in the world. And we're going to talk to her about living bhakti and kirtan and her spiritual her spiritual journey. Her journey.
Journey, is that what you're looking for?
That's the word, journey. We're all on a journey. So every day we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is many books of ancient India. This book stands out as the book to sort of like resurrect the spirit soul. We're all spiritual beings. This is what we were saying yesterday. We're all spiritual beings. We just forgot. And this is the book to assist us in remembering an identity. Imagine if you had amnesia and you just couldn't remember your name, and people are showing you like photographs. See, this is you and me. This is your dog. This is your house. And the person, I can't remember. This is what the Bhagavatam, it helps remind us of how we're supposed to think. I've been thinking crazy thoughts. I've been doing activities that don't fulfill my heart. I've been chasing mirages. And if you feel like, yeah, that might be me. I've made some foolish choices, and sometimes I make those foolish choices like I'm running in circles, like I'm on a merry-go-round of bad choices. The Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to be that light, sort of like that hop-off point from the merry-go-round, that light at the end of the tunnel, and that healing herb to get us out of this disease condition of material existence. Or if you just like interesting, cool, thought-provoking philosophy, you might dig this as well. If you're a yoga teacher, you might like this show specifically, so you understand a little bit of the background of the yoga system. And this is sort of what me and Kaustubha are passionate about. We're really passionate about this show. We really love to do it. And I think it's important, which is another part of bhakti too. We're not recluses. We're in the world as much as we can be when we're quarantined. But it's important to connect with what you feel you're born to do, and do that. Don't keep that in the closet. If you've got some talent, some skill, some art, some calling, please answer that calling. The world needs it. But we say, just don't do what you're supposed to do. That's not dharma, doing what you're good at. It's doing what you're good at, geared towards a spiritual direction. There's a lot of people who have fulfilled all their material potential, but they're miserable. Because what we're good at should not only fulfill me deeply and benefit me deeply, but it should benefit and uplift all the people in my universe that I touch. So this is sort of what we're speaking about in reference to Dharma. And we're speaking about the most dharmic person there is right now in this part of the Bhagavatam. One of our favorite people, Maharaj Bhishma. He's called the Pitamaha, the grandsire of the Kuru dynasty. Right? You want to say something about the Bhagavatam for newbies, Kaustubha?
Well, I guess what I'd say is that there's a whole vast world of literature out there called the Vedic literature, which is primarily, you could say exclusively, compiled by one sage named Vyasadeva. And he presented them in a way that was a progression, building towards like finer clarity. Because a lot of it is hard to, there's so much of it, it's hard to always know what's the most important thing. And as he got to the end of his career, he kind of clarified it all in the Bhagavatam. So it's, 16,000 verses. It's a vast work, but it's really kind of getting through all the ritual, getting through all of the more vague teachings, and then just really making it clear what's most essential in spiritual life. And what we find that ultimately what it all comes down to is divine love. That, as you were saying, we're meant to do things for a particular, don't just do what you're good at, but do it with a deeper purpose. Mm. And ultimately that purpose or that dharma for every living being is ultimately to uncover, rediscover that divine love, which is really our true nature. And Bhagavatam is the culmination of all that yoga. If you're interested in yoga, if you're interested in Eastern philosophy, it's all stemming from these works of Vyasadeva, either directly or indirectly. And so he's the author of it all. He's the guy that really knows what it's all about more than anyone. And he clarifies it all in this Bhagavatam so that we don't get caught up in the non-essential stuff and we really focus on the essential stuff.
It's especially that culture of India has been sort of preserved. You want to find the culture of ancient Egypt. We can just try to figure it out archaeologically, or, how did they worship Athena in Athens and how did they worship Zeus? But India has this living culture that is similar in many ways. You still find people who speak the Sanskrit language, who do the rituals in the temples, the way they did them, the cooking, the dance, the art, the literature, and any one of those things you can dive deeply into and almost get lost in it. You could study Indian dance, and there's all different types of Indian dance: classical dance, Odissi, Bharatanatyam, Raghunath, the Manipuri dance. It goes on. You can get into one of those and just get lost in it for your life. That could be your dedication.
Right.
There's so much there, but it's sort of like the equivalent of just sort of like laying on your back under a pickup truck and like studying parts of the vehicle. Oh, this is a really cool vehicle. Look how the fuel line, by the way, I know nothing about vehicles. Gotta put that out there now. If you're a mechanic going, what's he talking about? There's no fuel line underneath the, anyway, looking at the fuel line, looking at the carburetor, looking at the you know what I'm talking about.
The chassis, is that what you're going to say?
Chassis. looking at each thing and being fascinated, and each part of the vehicle or computer or car or tractor, whatever you want to say, is sort of fascinating. But when you step back and see the whole picture, that's really fascinating. So be it architecture, music, cooking, dance, you can get lost in any one of these. And some of our people practicing bhakti do. They become expert at Vedic astrology, expert at Shilpa Shastra, the study of Vedic art and diagrams and architecture. They get expert at so many things. But the real focus, or what we like to say is, where are we going with all this? What's the home run? What's the big takeaway? Am I supposed to become an Ayurvedic doctor? Is that the takeaway? I learned some, peculiar healing technique. Where do we go? And the idea is that all these practices are meant to settle the mind, keep us healthy, so we can do our big life's pilgrimage, the pilgrimage of the soul, which is awaken our real identity. Shed the false, listen to this one, exoskeleton, right? Like my kids had me watching an ant documentary yesterday.
You picked that one up.
Shed the exoskeleton. of the material body and resurrect our real identity of our spiritual being. And that is, and you know what you do? It's really interesting. We actually learn to do it in this lifetime. It's not something you pray for, and then when you die, you attain this pie in the sky when you die. No, it happens now in this lifetime. You can actually tangibly watch yourself evolve. And it's not to be in an arrogant way. You can start to notice that you get pulled away from the things that were binding you, that you were attached to, that weren't serving you. I mean, everybody's got something on their plate that they'd be like, I wish I could get rid of this bad habit. I wish I could just let go of this bad habit. I wish I was a little bit more focused. I wish I let go of my rage. I wish I could let go of this addiction. I can't, right? So everybody's got something like that. You can witness yourself start to transcend the body. And that's what's the beauty of this path and how it's taught and how it's practiced. It's not a prayer to death. It is a tangible stepping over a constant sort of like painting a masterpiece of your life within this lifetime until that time of death, when you're actually in this place right now. And it's a huge bridge to cross to get to where Bhishma Dev is at. But here is a man who's suffering incredible amounts of pain. You can't even imagine the pain he must be going through. Yet he's completely detached from his body as himself. And he's in fixed meditation on Krishna. And by the way, Krishna, if you're new to this whole game, Krishna is one way to say God. And Krishna has appeared on the planet at this time, and he's standing right in front of this great dharmic general as he's leaving his body, and he's offering prayers. Whew! I'm just talking today. Shall we dive in, my friend?
Yeah. Bhishma is now shedding his exoskeleton.
You like that exoskeleton? I was thinking of like a crab. They were like crabs. That was me imitating a crab's voice. Okay.
Is it Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 43?
43. That's where we are.
All right.
And we start with this little mantra, and it goes something like this: Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should first offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord, Narayan, another way to say God. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the transcendent Lord, loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established in the heart as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. You know what I love about that prayer? I love the all that is troublesome to the heart. I was like, yeah, good. It's like a promise. They give you, a lot of times in these Vedic prayers, they give you a promise, like a benediction. You do this, and all that stuff troublesome to your heart's going to go away. Anybody take great comfort in that one? That one really like hits me good. Get rid of my troubled heart. So we are the narrator speaking, Sutta Goswami. Thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Should we purport this or just move on? Oh, you're muted, man.
It's his mic.
You got mic issues, Kaustubha.
Sorry, how's that?
That's good.
Okay. I was going to say, yeah, let's read the purport. But one thing I thought mentioning is, this term merge is used here.
Yeah, we generally don't say merge because merge is that like that other type of liberation, which people into bhakti are not in. Again, it's very, saying love is very like nuanced. A lot of traditions you hear love God with your, but love is also nuanced also. So to merge with God, in bhakti, we don't say that so much because we don't want to merge. I want to be separate enough so I can serve. If I merge, I can't serve. I'm inside you. I can't serve you inside you.
If
Like
I merge,
like a
I can
bacteria.
serve.
Oh, yeah, that's a good hashtag. That's a good.
Okay.
Anyone looking for a new tattoo? If I merge, I can't serve. So,
But I looked that up because I just thought it was odd that it was translated that way. But I came across this. Well, I came across it's right there in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, but it says like the archaic form of this word or definition of this word, merge, is to plunge or engulf in something.
okay.
So like when you plunge into the water,
immerse.
yeah, it's kind of like immersing it, where you don't become the water, but in a sense you're merged into it. And so it's not that Bhishma Dev became Krishna, but he merged himself, or he became the Paramatma, the super soul. But he became just 100% completely absorbed in like that. I'd imagine Prabhupada will probably mention something about it in the commentary.
He does. He calls it nirvikalpa samadhi.
Oh,
the
yeah.
stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called nirvikalpa samadhi, because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord and his mind into remembering his different activities. See, this is what we're doing just by reading every day. We are in a practice to change our thoughts, to change our thinking. When we change our thoughts, change our thinking, the next natural thing is we change what comes out of our mouth. We change our speech, right? Because our speech affects everybody around us. We could fall in love with our speech, or we could create havoc with our speech in a family. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight, he began to see the Lord personally present before him. And thus, all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. This is the highest stage of perfection, and it is only possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice. Did I say that wrong? This is the highest stage of perfection, and it is possible for everyone. That's beautiful. It's good to know that. For everyone to attain this stage of practice of devotional service. The devotional service of the Lord consists of 9 principles of service activities, and they are: 1, hearing; 2, chanting. It's what we're doing right now. I'm speaking and you guys are listening, right? And then Kaustubha speaks and I listen. So that's hearing and chanting. And these are the ways to practice bhakti. 3, remembering. During the course of the day, I'm thinking, right? Either of spiritual directions or thoughts or choices or a form of a deity, perhaps, right? You're sitting and meditating.
I think remembering can also like indicate like meditation, like where you sit down and you bring your mind to, a particular name, form, pastime, quality of God, like that.
Sure. Serving the lotus feet, worshiping, praying, executing the orders, fraternizing. That's a good one. Fraternizing. I have never heard it as fraternizing. What's that one? That's
becoming a friend.
Becoming a friend. Oh, that's what fraternizing means. I never thought. Fraternal. And fully surrendering. Hey, I'm going to jump in because it almost sounds like serving the lotus feet. Well, is that worshiping? What's the difference between serving the lotus feet and worshiping?
Worshiping, we would have. Yeah,
there's examples in the Nectar Devotion of each one, and I can't remember.
Yeah. Also, I think Srila Prabhupada's longest commentary is on this verse where this is all laid out in the 7th canto. So we could go there.
Okay. All right. We'll wait for the 7th canto. Okay. There's 12 cantos here that we're reading. We're only in one. They said there's approximately, maybe exactly 18,000 verses.
Not exactly, but yeah.
Not exactly. 18,000 verse. But you know what? That's pretty big. And this is one of the big, and it's not the biggest epic in ancient India. This isn't one of the big, this is one of the most popular, but the biggest being the Mahabharata, which is the biggest epic in the world. 100,000 Sanskrit couplets. It's quite unbelievable. Couplets, you like that? 100, and then there's the Ramayana, which is like 34,000. They say the Ramayana is the Adi Kavi, or the original poem. Okay. Any one of these practices, these are called the 9 practices of bhakti, right? Any one of them, or all of them, are equally competent to award the desired result, but they require to be practiced persistently under the guidance of an expert devotee of the Lord. The first item, hearing, is the most important item of all, and therefore hearing of the Bhagavad Gita and, later on, the Srimad Bhagavatam is essential for the serious candidate who wants to attain the stage of Bhishma Dev at the end of life. You know, Kaustubha, sometimes, you know, and I'm sure it happens to you too, we get so much, which we love, so many messages come in from Wisdom of the Sages, or from the Patreon account, or from our Instagram. It's so inspiring because, and sometimes they drop out of nowhere. They say, I saw you on Joe Rogan and I got this question. I want to get more serious in my spiritual life. How can I do it? You'll hear this again and again. How can I get more serious? Or you might have a friend that thinks, oh, you know, Sega, living in Portugal, is spiritual. I want to be more like Sega, something like that. And so a good way to say, what I tell them is, the best thing you could do is just listen to the show every day. Because this is exactly what we're doing, this hearing and chanting, Shravanam, Kirtanam. It's easy to get on. You can do it in your downtime. There's a lot of downtime that we have in this world. And the real question is, what am I putting in my ears on my downtime? Right? What is my food for my thoughts? And if you're and we're in a pandemic, there's a lot of time. I saw one meme yesterday that said, today's travel adventures will be walking to the window, walking to the wall. So this is a great time to binge listen to this stuff. And if you can listen on a regular basis, like every day, it starts to redirect your thinking. And I think everybody who's listening live today, it's safe to say there's 109 people. We should kick that last person out just to make it 108. Number 9, get the hell off the.
blew the auspiciousness there.
Just blew it for us. Everyone's having a great day.
Someone left. We're down to 108 now.
Oh, come on. I was kidding. No, I was kidding. Come back. Okay. I'm an offender. So anyway, oh God. What was I saying? So anyway,
the importance of hearing.
The importance of hearing on a regular basis. And we've got like 108 people here listening this morning live on Zoom. It's like, they get it. They get it. There's a special potency of hearing something on a progressive spiritual path on a regular basis. And there's days that I don't want to do it. And that's when I got to show up. And there's days when I want to do it and I show up. And we do it regularly, whether I like it or not. That's our idea of practicing yoga. We have a sadhana, a spiritual sadhana. Sadhana means, and maybe Mary, you can write that word on the board if people don't know it. Sadhana means I have a spiritual practice and I do it on a regular basis, because we understand that when we make an explicit choice of changing habits, it can't be implicit. If I say I'm gonna start yoga this year, it's 2020, I'm gonna start yoga. And then there's another person who says, I'm gonna start yoga this year, but I'm gonna do it 3 days a week for 1 hour a day for the whole year. Who is gonna get more advanced in yoga when December comes around? When you make an explicit decision, this is my plan, and make that your plan, you start to see tangible results. By hearing the Bhagavatam on a regular basis, it will start to change your consciousness. That's not me talking. That's the Bhagavatam itself talking. But it is me talking too, because it has an effect on me. It has a very tangible effect on my life. And so we invite you Give it a try. Put it in your downtime. Y'all got to drive somewhere. Play it in your car. What did we used to do in the old days? You don't have a car, Kaustubha. You live in New York City. What did you used to do in the car in the old days? You just drive, look around.
Put on the radio.
Just look around. Yeah, I know. Radio. Yeah, I know. There's nothing to listen to. What are you going to listen to?
You know, there's one thing in this verse that kind of interesting is that Bhishma Dev, he wasn't like this type of yogi that goes off into the forest and practices this kind of intense self-discipline, trying to control the mind that way. But here, when he wanted to, he could enter into this nirvikalpa samadhi, right?
Will.
It says that, his mind, speech, sight, and actions, they all ceased, right? Or he said that he merged himself with his mind, his speech, his sight, and his actions. And thus he became silent and his breathing stopped. And so although he was like an active man in the world and he embraced all these important social responsibilities, and he did it for a long time, like right up to the end, he was the topmost yogi, that he could just, that at that moment when he chose, he could merge into this samadhi. And that's what's being described here.
It's
yeah.
You paused, but I couldn't tell if you paused, and I could speak,
you go
or
ahead.
if you were swallowing, and I just jumped in like an eagle picking up a snake. My chance to speak.
Please jump in.
I was going to say, like, Bhishma Dev is the perfect example. Through all Vedic culture, he's known as the Mahatma, one of the 12 Mahajans, or the great souls of all ancient India. And he's not a classic, like, renounced yogi. He's a king. He's matter of fact, if you think about it, how many kings are considered Mahajans?
Yeah.
Right? Right? Yudhisthira, Prahlad, Janak.
Yeah.
Got a lot of kings in there in the Mahajans department. So anyway, when we think of a great soul, we think of like a renunciate. He's got nothing. He's given up everything in this world. Raghunath Swami's story of, a journey home. And although that it's a path of renunciation, pretty much no one on our Zoom group is like that. We're sort of like mixed in this world. And, truthfully, sometimes even with people like, when I have a monk in my life, a senior monk or a Swami, like we have Raghunath Swami who's our teacher, and we always ask him for advice. But sometimes there's advice I won't ask him. You know what I mean? Because it's sort of like, it's personal. It has to do with my family and my home. Sometimes I do, but there's certain things I just won't go there with him because he's a monk. And once I was talking to him about a home, and we forget it. Long story. But anyway, I tried some home advice, and he goes, well, I don't know if I can give advice on that. I've never had a home for the last 45 years. And so I was like, okay, forget it. But where was I? I had a great point where I was going with this, Kaustubha. What were you just talking about?
Well, just hand it off. I can take it from here, Raghu, right?
Just run with it, Kaustubha.
So what's interesting, and I think it's important, is there's a stereotypical idea of what spirituality is.
Go, run with it.
And sometimes even, and most of us are not capable of really living that life. Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita comes to the conclusion after hearing Krishna speak in the 6th chapter, I'm not capable of living that life. Wandering off, leaving behind family, leaving behind home, leaving behind society, strictly controlling the mind. I don't think I can do it. And Krishna says, that's no problem, because there's other kind of yogas, and you don't need to be pretentious. You don't, it's like, what's important is that you get into the essence of it. And so these paths of karma yoga and bhakti yoga, they're open to us, and they're effective, and they're powerful. But really what's important is the sincerity. So it's not so much the external, sometimes I think people want to kind of, embrace some of that external stuff and kind of put on a show of spirituality. And it might have something to do with, not to say that anyone that does it, but like say like you grow the dreadlocks and you adopt a certain. type of dress that's kind of like, you know, quote unquote spiritual looking or something like that. Nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't budge you an inch forward in terms of your spiritual practice.
Sure.
But here's like someone like Bhishma who lived a life where like, I'm going to embrace my social responsibilities and do it on behalf of God and serve humanity on behalf of God in this way. I'll sacrifice my own time. I'll sacrifice my own energy to do the right thing, to be dharmic. And at the same time, I'm cultivating the depth of my spiritual meditation through, as being said here, reading, you know, on a daily basis, meditating on mantra on a daily basis, you know, doing other types of services and so on. So this is something that's like, it's non-pretentious, but it's very effective and very real. So it may not be this, someone may not look like the stereotypical yogi, but actually they're practicing that yoga like really deeply and effectively. And Krishna kind of speaks about that in the 6th chapter, how like, you know, the person who well, if we go to let me pull it up, you know, like the first verse to the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It may take me a second to pull it up here.
You know, this reminds me, Kaustubha, of the Govardhan Palace. There's this place that we go to that in India, which was like an old palace. You know what I love about India? The traditional in India, it's like they didn't go on vacations like we went on vacation. We'd go to Virginia Beach, or we'd go to the Jersey Shore. But in India, they would go to holy places. That's their concept of a vacation. They'll go to Haridwar with their family and their kids and their grandfather. And they go to Rishikesh, or they go see Balaji in South India. And that is their vacation. And it's almost like it has a little bit of a, if you're an American, you know, a little bit of a carnival feel to it. If you go to Haridwar, they're selling trinkets and food and sparkly things for the kids, but it's all based on this spiritual devotion. And so the kings would build these palaces in holy places. Like there's this one ashram that we go to that was donated to Prabhupada's mission because it was basically an old palace that was dilapidated. And the devotees like redid it. It's like this beautiful sandstone palace and turned it into an ashram. But the king would go there on holiday with his entire court. And there's the sitting place of the king and the queen where they'd sit in meditation and chant japa as they're looking out at Govardhan Hill. I mean, that's the concept of a vacation. It's not like, you're not like running away from your busyness of life so you can forget. It's you're stepping away from your regular dharma so you can go deeper into your spiritual life. So we all have some material things we're out in the world. That's normal. That's understandable. That's part of having a home, a family, etc. But we can't neglect our spiritual life. And we usually put it in the beginning of the day. We wake up early. We have a special time in the morning where we really hear. Some of us are fortunate enough where we can put it in the course of our day. Some of you are yoga teachers. You can chant in your classes. You can read. Or some of us are driving. We got a vegan trucker on the show. He just listens to transcendental conversation and kirtan while he's driving across America doing his thing. And then at the end of the day, we chill out. We don't want to zone out and just get tanked out of our mind to forget our day. We have some same thing. We have some time to connect in so many different ways. So this is an important thing as we're out in the world on our dead time, and in the morning and the evening, we sandwich our busyness in with some spiritual hearing, chanting, or a transcendental upliftment. And it helps us deal with our day. And then we need time, like these kings, where, you know what? I'm just going to take a week. I'm going to take a weekend. I'm going to take 2 weeks and go real deep. And that's powerful. And then we call that pilgrimage. Did you find that verse, Kaustubha?
I found it a long time ago.
You got to get like a leash and just pull me in.
No, I'm just kidding. So here's the verse. So Krishna says, and he's speaking to Arjuna, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work, right? One who's doing their work and who works as he is obligated, right? So I have social responsibilities. I'm doing them, but I'm not doing them with a selfish purpose. I'm doing them because of the right thing to do, right? So one who who is unattached to the fruits of their work, but who works as they're obligated, is in the renounced order of life. Literally, the term that he uses is he's a sannyasi, right? So the sannyasi is, generally we think of the sannyasi as the person that's renounced family life, that's wandered off. So, but Krishna's saying, he's saying that no, you don't have to think of it in that stereotypical way. It's the essence of it, that the sannyasi is supposed to give up his own personal interests, transcend the demands of the mind and the senses. So he's saying that that person that's socially responsible in this work, but doing it as they're obligated, doing it as a service, not for them, not with the selfish purpose, that's the true sannyasi, that's the real renunciate. And then he goes further. And this, if you really think about what he's saying here, he says, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. And so, but what that means is, like, when you're involved in social life, like in the Vedic paradigm, that yogic paradigm, you light a fire, you do a ceremony, right? You do a ritual. Every time you do something, like say you buy a new house, then you have the ceremony, you light the fire. Right?
That interesting. That's something, if you grew up in the West, we don't do that. The puja for the car.
Well, now they do like that, yeah. But you get married, you light the fire. You have a child, you do another ceremony. There's always a ceremony for all of those things, because you want to bring auspiciousness into it. You want to focus the mind on it properly. You want to demonstrate your gratitude and so on. And so someone may say, I'm beyond all those things. I'm leaving all that behind. And Krishna's saying that doesn't make you just stepping away from social responsibilities does not necessarily make you a mystic or a sannyasi, but you can be one if you're selflessly giving of yourself, embracing your social roles. Now we see that that's what Bhishma did. That was his life, and at the end he entered into samadhi. He was a true mystic, right? And I think it's so important for all of us, because practically none of us, Arjuna said, I can't do it. So what to speak of all of us, but we all, we have to be good mothers, good fathers, good husbands, good wives. We all are in the workplace. People have different jobs they do. How will I do that job? What consciousness will I go into that job with? Am I seeing it as just my opportunity to make money, to buy me the things that I think will make me happy? Or do I conceive of my job as my service, and the fruits of that work I engage in my service? And so when I'm walking to work, I'm not thinking, hey, I'm gonna make money today to buy the things that I need. You're going like you're moving through life like that. You're not a yogi. But when you're doing the exact same activity, but in a different state of consciousness, then you become the true mystic. And that's what the Gita is teaching. It's an important part of what the Gita is teaching. I was thinking it might be nice to hear from Ganesham, who's like a person that does that so well. We interviewed him.
Unmute that man.
Unmute that, because he's also such a Bhagavad Gita person, So I'd be interested in hearing his realizations about how that applies in his life. How you doing, Ganesham?
I'm well. Thank you.
Reporting from, what do you call the room that you're in?
Chaplaincy office.
Chaplain's Lounge.
Chaplain's Lounge at the New York Presbyterian Hospital after doing a full night of shift?
Yes, I'm live from the hospital.
Live from the COVID clinic at New York Presbyterian Hospital. Yeah?
Yes.
You want to share anything about renouncing the desire for sense gratification, being in this world but not of this world, etc.?
Yeah, there's one great commentator on the Bhagavad Gita whose name was Baladev Vidyabhushana. And he actually says that karma-yoga is a prerequisite for every other yoga path. And it's kind of what we're talking about, karma-yoga, where karma-yoga means three things. You have a particular nature in this world, a psychological nature, and therefore it's connected to a certain kind of work that you do. So it's good to find, like, what is my nature, and what's, let me find work that's in harmony with that. So the first thing, it's your nature and working according to your nature. And then it's you work in a detached way, detached action. So like you were saying, Kaustubha, that not so much about the fruits or the results, but it's almost just this sense of duty where you're just becoming more steady and reliable You know, you work with integrity. And then the third thing of karma yoga is that, and the whole thing is an offering to God. You see that it's not just you and your small life, you know, with just a few people around you, and you see that this is what my life and work is, but you're also seeing that this is a kind of work that's where I'm kind of cooperating on a larger scale, and I'm like a co-worker with God in this world. And so, yeah, with bhakti, we're practitioners of bhakti, but this idea of karma yoga and your work in this world with according to your nature as an offering, this is like a prerequisite, Baladev Vidyabhushana says, in order to practice every other kind of yoga, including bhakti yoga. So it's really essential for us to focus on it.
Could you give me those three again?
Yeah, the first, this comes from Ramanujacharya. He says karma
Ramanuja or
yoga.
Baladev?
This part of the three, what karma yoga means, comes from Ramanuja.
Okay.
He says it means you're doing work according to your nature. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is that it's detached action. It's detached from the results. You're actually doing it for a kind of personal reason, in a sense. You're developing yourself by doing something, you know, detached, steady, and you're letting go of what the results are, but you're actually becoming more whole and reliable. And then the third thing is that you see your work as an offering of God, offering to God, and that's what makes it yoga. That's why it's called karma yoga. So this last part is what makes it different than just ordinary work that's detached, let's say, but it's an offering to God, so it's also yoga.
And that would be a prerequisite. Why? Like, why can't I just jump ahead and take up another form of yoga, like Jnana yoga or Ashtanga yoga or something like that?
If you think of, the first point, if you're doing work or outside of your nature, that may not be a very strong path. You know, if we're doing something that's really outside of what we are and who we are, if we can connect to who we are and what we are and live in that way, and it kind of will achieve a certain steadiness. Mm-hmm. And so that's one important thing, you know.
Is it that we, in other words, by working, by, like, say, again, I use this example a lot, but say like I'm a person with business aptitude, but I might, it's not uncommon that a person with that kind of business aptitude is a little greedy or something like that, you know. Mm-hmm. But by being dutiful, by, as you're saying, by, okay, it's my nature, I'm going to do business in the world, but I'm going to do it with detachment. I'm going to cultivate a sense of, hey, this isn't for me, the money's not for me, and I make an offering of it. And by working in that way day by day, cultivating that consciousness, I kind of let go of that lower nature, and then I'm qualified to actually meditate. But if I try to meditate before I've let go of my greed and so on and my distracted mind, I'm not going to be very successful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, detached action is not an easy thing, you know, to really let go of the results, but you can see it's kind of mode of goodness. So from the platform of the mode of goodness, then bhakti becomes easier in a sense. You know, it's almost like, if we don't go to the mode of goodness a little bit first, then bhakti will be difficult. There'll be many hardships.
Yeah. Okay.
Another thing, both you guys, we all know people who are either very wealthy and very wound up in their business, and their business is part of their life. Then we've met people who've have that same business acumen, but they've decided, you know what, I'm not interested in being a businessman. And they take that same business intelligence and they open a massive temple, ashram, project, etc. And we've seen them, like your guru was like that. He just decided, my life is for God. And he was like, I mean, if he was like in the material world, he'd be like some CFO, very powerful leader. The intelligence and the forethought and the way his mind worked. But some people, they just don't want anything to do with the material world whatsoever. So it's not just like, okay, I'm a businessman, so I give, a percentage of my tithing to a spiritual cause. That is something also. But there's some people who just choose, you know what, this whole thing is over. I'm done with it. And that's a real type of surrender too. And it's different. It's not one is better than the other, because you really have to have a very loud calling to go into that I'm all in like that. And if you're not ready for it and you do it, you get caught, and we've seen this, you get caught in between like you ping pong back and forth. I'm a renunciate. No, I'm not a renunciate. I am a renunciate. I'm not a renunciate. We've seen people's spiritual career do this back and forth. Better to stay steady and slowly make progression wherever you go. But some people, they can't help it. They get a loud calling to go deeper and deeper and deeper very quick, very
But
fast.
I think even in that case, like you know, there was Ganesham was quoting Ramanuja saying that this karma yoga is a prerequisite. But even though like you're using my Guru Maharaj who had that kind of like savvy or aptitude, but even though he went all in, Prabhupada still engaged him in managing.
Right.
You know.
Right. So they're doing, yes, but I'm just saying they're not mixed up in selling mundane goods for mundane purposes and stuff like that. Right. But yeah, he's not going to walk away from what he's good at. I mean, it's how I was sort of like engaged when I was a monk. Most of my time as a monk, I was still in the band Shelter. And for me, I felt completely satisfied. Like to be celibate and sense controlled and wake up super early. That was cool because I felt like my work in the course of the day was writing music, writing lyrics, you know, planning touring and stuff like that. I felt like my psychology was sort of happily engaged in serving the world and serving a bigger mission, something bigger than me. So I felt happily engaged in what I was doing. I didn't feel like I'm missing out on life. But at the same time, I was immersed in the culture of bhakti, and I felt peaceful, actually. It's hard to understand that. How could a guy be in a rock and roll band traveling the world and be peaceful? Usually you think of a guy like, it's a crazy rock and roll life. It was like not. It was like, we played in Vegas. You know what we did in Vegas? We woke up early. We chanted our japa. We cooked in the back of the van some khichdi. One of the guys made chapatis, and we went to bed. You know, that's what we do in Vegas. That's what
chapatis you cook in Vegas, stay in Vegas, Raghu.
It was like the most boring rock and roll band of all time. That's the problem when you get to sort of sattva. You become boring. Your life becomes boring. You know? No, look at you and Ganesham. You guys are so sattvic. It's like, it's almost, to most of us who are in the mode of passion and ignorance, we're looking at you guys like, come on. You're just peaceful, self-controlled. There's no reality show being made out of Ganasham's. Well, actually, your life in that COVID-19 ward could be a reality show. But for the most part, when you're in the mode of goodness, everything appears boring because you want people going through like heartaches, divorce, you know, cheating on your spouse. That's the stuff that sells things. But sattva is very peaceful. It's still waters. It's actually quite attractive, but you'll bail me out here.
No, your life is actually a perfect example of it, because it seems like it's the anti-yoga life of being like a rock star, but then you turned it into yoga, and that's what karma yoga is capable of doing. Because as you were saying, it was according to your nature, but you did it with detachment, where a lot of guys are going into that with their just to fulfill their attachments of fame, of sex, of money, etc. You did it to serve, and you made an offering of it. So it was, there you go. You followed Ramanuja's formula there, Raghu.
All right. Thank you, Ramanuj. If you don't know Ramanuj, he was a great master in a parallel tradition of what we're studying right now. Okay. You want to go on here, sir?
Let's do it. Thank you, Ganashamji.
Thank you, Ganashamji. Come on.
Text 44.
Yeah. My computer's thinking slow. There we go. Knowing that Bhishma had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day. To enter into, you want me to dip into the purport?
Yeah, dip.
So if you're unfamiliar with this, there is an actual Sanskrit text that we follow word for word, and then great masters historically have written commentaries on the verses. Those are called the purport, or the bhashya, I think is the Sanskrit word.
Bhashya.
Bhashya. And Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he wrote the purports of this one we're reading. Where did he get them from? He gets them from other previous masters, but he updates them for a contemporary audience. And that's sort of, in one sense, what me and Kaustubha are doing. We're sort of saying them in our own words for the audience. But we're staying sort of like chaste to the traditional commentaries. Enter into, or to become merged into, the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute means to enter the original home of the living being. Nicely put. The living beings are all component parts and parcels of the absolute personality of Godhead, and therefore they are eternally related with him as the servitor and the served. The Lord is served by all his parts and parcels, as the complete machine is served by its parts and parcels. You know what's interesting? We're serving anyway. That's just material world. We don't like the concept of like, wait, I gotta serve God? We're serving. We're serving something in this material. Oftentimes we just serve a boss, or work in a factory and a job, or even if we're self-employed, we're like, we could serve our senses, we serve our mind, we serve our desires. Sometimes I serve my dog. I mean, there's so many things of the material world we're serving, and that's natural. I mean, I'm a father. I have children and a farm, and so I have to serve, but that service also has to be directed towards the absolute. But you can't think that you're not going to serve. That's just what the jiva does. The jiva is born to give. The question is, as Bob Dylan put it so eloquently, you got to serve somebody. It might be the devil or it might be the Lord, but you got to serve somebody. So we got to serve in this material world. Somehow we got to serve illusion, or we got to serve truth. You ever listen to Bob Dylan?
Yeah, a little. Yeah, I know that song. Sure. That was his kind of, I think that was his coming out of his Christian era.
Yeah, the Christian makeover. He went through a whole Christian thing.
But, you know, he did have some exposure to Prabhupada's books and to devotees. And I think that's, you know, that is actually coming from there, you know.
He did. He was like into it, I think, for a while.
He was.
All those guys were into it. You know? It was a thing. Bhakti was like a thing in the 60s, 70s, like in that circle of rock and roll circle.
Yeah.
The Lord is served by all his parts and parcels. Okay. Similarly, any part and parcel of the absolute detached from the service of the Lord is useless. The living beings who are in the material world are all disintegrated parts and parcels of the supreme whole, and they are no longer as important as the original parts and parcels. I mean, we feel this way often. We feel like, what am I doing with my life? I feel disconnected, disintegrated. I need to feel connected. That is like a natural, cross-cultural feeling of the jiva. I feel disconnected. If you feel that way, that is beautiful, because it's the sign of now is the time for yoga. Now is the time to reconnect. Prabhupada puts it very bluntly, doesn't it? The living beings in this material world are all disintegrated parts and parcels of the whole. They are no longer important as original parts and parcels. They are, however, more integrated living beings who are eternally liberated. The material energy of the Lord, called Durga Shakti, or the superintendent of the prison house, takes charge of the disintegrated parts and parcels, and thus they undergo a conditioned life under the laws of material nature. When the living being becomes conscious of this fact, he tries to go back home, back to Godhead, and thus the spiritual urge of the living being begins.
That's what you were just saying, right?
Just saying.
When you feel disintegrated, then that's a good point, because you say, oh, I need to reconnect.
I need to reconnect. And, you know, they use that beautiful, the hand has function, but the function of the hand is to serve the whole. I pick a piece of fruit, I eat the fruit, and now my whole body is nourished. The hand disconnected from the body is gruesome, right? You don't want to see a hand. You don't want to walk into a yoga studio and see a hand laying on the floor. Even if it's a very beautiful hand with beautiful rings on it, it'd still be like, ah, right? So the hand has a beauty to it when it works with the body. When the hand serves the whole, it has a beauty, it has a function. But if I disconnect the hand from the body, the whole thing becomes ugly. And in the same way, we are disintegrated when we are not in connection. When we're living in this world, disconnected from the whole. And what does that look like? It looks like I'm the center. I'm the center, not God is the center. I am the center. And I'm trying to find people that agree with my material agenda, who stroke my ego, and I call them friends. And so that's why part of our spiritual practice is to get over this concept of friends and enemies and start to see us all as part of something much bigger. If people are doing rude things, cruel things, horrible things, we're upset with this sin, but not the sinner. The sinner, so to speak, is the pure spiritual. Everybody's a pure spiritual being. They've just forgotten. And our real wholeness comes from reconnecting with ourself as a servitor of something bigger than us, not trying to be the center. And that is a difference between who is actually a great leader, a great parent, a great friend. They're not just trying to collect a bunch of people to endorse their ego. This is what Ravana did. All the great villains we hear about in these epics, Duryodhana, Ravana, Hiranyakashipu. I tell you, I was a monk for about 6.5 years. I really got into selfless service as soon as I popped out some kids. That's when you really every parent can hear me on that one. It's like, you never realize how much you got to give. And there's a pleasure in that giving that you can't really explain it. But it's exhausting. Anybody who sleeps with their kids and wakes up in the morning, or the kid is sick, it's exhausting taking care of kids. And it's incredibly, every parent will say it's incredibly nourishing. Why? Because they're actually doing something that is not just for their own pleasure. It's like, you got to be selfless. And sometimes it's heartbreaking, and sometimes it's there's no sleep involved. But it's part. If you look at it in a spiritual lens, I am growing so much from this because I'm getting out of my own head and my selfishness. Should I go on with that or go to the next verse, sir?
It is 6:02, Raghu.
Man, I could do this forever. Well, that is it. Oh, Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Krishna.
Just start singing, Robert.
Jai Shri Krishna Bolo. Anyway, thank you for everybody. We had 109 people until I shamed somebody right out of the room. But actually, now
we had much more.
We had much more.
Yeah, 117 at one point. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. Everybody joining us on Wisdom of the Sages. No, on our podcast or on Facebook Live. Thanks. We do this every day. Please join our ever-growing family. And tonight is Friday. We're having Sweet Baby Krishna reading. So if you want to... No? Mara's looking at me like, what?
We can, yeah.
Okay, tomorrow. Tomorrow, Sweet Baby Krishna.
Tomorrow?
I do a Sweet Baby Krishna tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for Patreon members. So if you want to support us during Patreon, we appreciate it. We want to keep this thing going forever because we love it. It's patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. Yeah, and give us a 5-star review if you're listening on the podcast. And if you're listening on Zoom, but you came in late, you snuck in the door there after we started, I just want to say good morning to you. Thanks for starting your morning with the Srimad Bhagavatam. You will not regret it. Some people are driving trucks listening. Some people are dancing with their cats right now. Some people have got their spouse and waking up their kids. Some people are listening in bed. And some people are dancing around the kitchen. So this is how we end every day. It's called a Krishna karaoke. Thanks to everybody joining us late. The Golden Brown family, Jeremy. Who am I missing here? Eric Noble, the old school original. Urugaya, Damodar Priya, Amalini. See you.